Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at one of my favourite throwback reviews that I've so far done on the channel, and it is that of the Transformers Revenge of the Fallen Supreme Class Devastator. This figure for so many years was by far one of my favourite Decepticon pieces in the collection, and really and truly even up until this date it still holds an incredibly special place in the collection. I think in regards to an actual combined form he looks awesome, fairly accurate to the movie despite this being one of the first Devastator figures ever produced, and the electronic feature that goes on within the head, honestly, it's just so awesome. Well over a decade since his original release, I think this is by far one of the best Devastator figures that we've ever got out there, even being a slight rival for the Studio Series version. Now we'll touch base more with that later on in the review, as I shall in fact be comparing what I dislike and like about both of these figures, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But for those of you who will recall, I actually did a throwback review on this guy. I believe it was very early 2019. It was definitely before we actually got the Studio Series version, so I thought that it would be nice to just do an almost refresh. Of course I have now much better lighting, much better audio, and I'm actually able to compare him with the most recent Studio Series version. Now as always, if there's a specific throwback character that you guys would like me to take a look at, please feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. But honestly, what character is going to be able to triumph over Devastator? He's just so massive, and he was in fact a part of the Supreme class, a line which is sadly now dead. Really and truly we only get Titan and Commander class figures nowadays, and I really hope that for Transformers Rise of the Beasts we can in fact see this line return for the live action movies, as we really did get some awesome figures. I believe originally we got a Supreme class Bumblebee, then we got Devastator, and then for Transformers 3 we did get the Jetwing Optimus Prime, so really hoping that we can in fact get something for Rise of the Beasts. But nevertheless, let's actually take a look at the details of this Devastator first of all. Now one thing worth noting is that I shan't actually be going into detail in regards to the individual components, just as they're really not all that interesting. They merely just transform into very mediocre alt modes, and unlike the Studio Series version, don't actually have their own individual robot modes, so we shall focus solely here today on the actual Devastator Stolt himself. But that's not to take anything away from this. I think this looks awesome. Now this is in fact actually a custom paint job fresh out of the packaging. This merely did have just a grey face. I shall insert an image here of what it sort of looked like upon its original release. My dad did in fact actually customise this to match the movie, and I think he did an absolute terrific job. You can see how we've got some fantastic red paint going on, we've got some dry brushing really to just weather this up, and I just think it looks so much better than the stock figure. But you can see we've got some really nice green highlights going on here for the eyes, the transparent green plastic which you'll see throughout the actual head, as of course that does holster some of the LEDs which you'll see in just a second. But you can see the attention to detail actually wasn't too bad here. For the main cement mixer you can see some of the grinder detailing of where he would churn up all of the different debris, and of course even skids and mud flap at one point, and you've got these strands here at the back which I believe actually launched in order to connect onto the neck piece. Now as we just turn our attention here to the shoulders, you can see the detail sadly isn't up to standard as to what you would expect from the Studio Series, but once again for a 2009 Supreme class first ever version of Devastator, I don't think they did a bad job at all. You can see some nice mustard yellow paint apps in order to almost give you this construction vehicle vibe. We've also once again got some nice green highlights to give you the impression that he's in fact inhaling some debris. As we just turn our attention here to this arm, once again very basic in terms of design, but definitely does the job. You can see the claws here. I do believe that this is in fact supposed to be Hightower, so you can definitely see the cradle section. Of course for Studio Series we had both scrap metal and Hightower, whereas this is just formed out of one component. And then as we flip here to this side, to be honest with you, this is actually my favourite out of the arms. We have what I imagine is supposed to be Scrapper, and you can see the detailing as well as the actual design of this too is really awesome there with those three claws. As we turn our attention to the torso, honestly, truth be told, not much going on here. There isn't all that much sculpt work. You've merely just got Mixmaster plugged into the actual base there of Scavenger. But here for the legs, much like the arms, the detail is a little basic when in comparison to some of the modern day figures, but pretty nice attention to detail. This of course is supposed to resemble Longhaul, and then as we turn our attention to this one, this is supposed to be Skipjack, or I believe Rampage, so that too has also turned out pretty nicely. And then as we just turn our attention here to the back of Devastator, you can see that it is incredibly basic. We don't in fact actually have the Vortex grinder which was given to us by DNA Designs, so you can see merely just red plastic, and of course this huge scoop section that you would see more of when we had Scavenger in vehicle mode. Now spinning our attention here to the front, you can see that already he just wants to showcase off his LED feature. Now this guy used to scare the crap out of me at night time, as he literally used to go off randomly all through the night. So for many years he has in fact sat dormant on my shelf with no batteries until this day where I've restored him and brought him back to full power. Now in order to actually demonstrate this, of course Revenge of the Fallen was known for having Mech Alive, and this guy had the ultimate Mech Alive gimmick. In the movie his entire face would expand, the mouth would open in order to reveal some super cool grinders, and he would just inhale everything and anything. And that's exactly what Hasbro did here with this figure. He truly does have a fantastic gimmick. So if you do in fact actually apply pressure here to this particular switch, you can see that the face will begin to lift up, expand, And you can see that is just so awesome. You've got all of these green LEDs inside, which will rotate around simultaneously in order to match the appearance from the movie. The entire head does in fact expand, revealing an enormous mouth. This honestly is something that I really wish the Studio Series version could have pulled off, and I'm not entirely sure how well it's coming across on camera, but inside there is in fact actually some grinder detailing in order to give you the impression that of course he's in fact churning some of that debris up. And I just think it's awesome how the mouth of course compresses into a fairly cylindrical piece, and then of course you open this up and it just expands into this enormous gaping hole, which you can in fact actually store some figures in, which I'll showcase in just a second. Now there is in fact a button, so I'll run through a few of the different phrases that he does state. And of course you've got to be a little careful that you don't actually dislodge the head from the neck. So you can see that you get this almost power up noise, and if you don't actually proceed to hold the button, it will essentially just short out and you'll get a very brief phase with a few different LEDs going on. But if you do in fact actually hold it, of course you will in fact get the full vacuum effect. So just to demonstrate that once more, you do want to hold the button for this. What a stellar gimmick that is. Honestly, they have done such a fantastic job. Honestly, 2009, Devastator is an absolute king where that Mecha Live gimmick is concerned. Now, you saw that he does in fact state various different phrases. There are in fact probably more, so we'll just push it one more time. You can see you get an incredibly menacing laugh. Sadly, we didn't actually see this sort of personality portrayed on screen, but for the toy, I think this is awesome. Now, if you were in fact able to actually wedge any Transformers in there and they did become stuck, you could spin your attention here to the back, and you can see that just by moving him, he's almost motion activated. You do want to take this piece here and just launch the cab section up, and you can see it will in fact actually allow you to have better access to manipulate any of the figures that may have become wedged. And you can also see here some of that grinder detailing that I was talking about earlier on, as well as once again some nice detailing here for the back, which I believe is in fact actually the speaker. So overall really awesome, but as mentioned, if you do begin to pick him up, he literally won't shut up at all. And just to show you that off one more time, just it's so cool. I'm still lost for words. It's just super awesome. In terms of the rest of the articulation, the arms here can hinge forwards and backwards. Very heavy ratchet joints. We've got hinge joints going on out to the side. Ratchet joints here at the elbows. The same applies here for the scrapper arm. The fingers are also individually articulated. And here for the legs, sadly, it's a little limited. These can just hinge forwards and backwards, bend slightly at the knee, and then rock here at the base of the foot. But actually manipulating him will of course cause some of those sound effects to activate automatically. Now, in order to demonstrate what I was mentioning earlier on in regards to him actually consuming some other Transformers, here we've got, let's say, the Studio Series Revenge of the Fallen Sideswipe. So you can open his mouth up and of course wedge this guy in there and literally trap Sideswipe within the mouth of Devastator. And now this is a deluxe figure. You can see just how enormous that head is to literally consume the entire vehicle mode. And if I actually bring in a figure of which I've got transformed into robot mode, here we've got Studio Series Jolt. Let's see if we can wedge him in there. Absolutely. So you can see once again a fairly good sized deluxe being easily able to be placed into the mouth of Devastator, something which sadly the Studio Series figure doesn't do. And that brings me back to a point which I've mentioned in a few of my recent reviews, is that despite the figures being absolutely killer nowadays, I truly do miss some of the gimmicks of the older figures, as this is just so cool. Even 10 years on after its original release, it holds up so nicely, and who doesn't want to actually wedge and smash some Autobots within the mouth of the live action Michael Bay Devastator? I know that I certainly do, and it was something that I did for so many hours back in the day as a younger kid / collector. But really an awesome figure. Now, in order to actually bring out the Studio Series version for a comparison, it's definitely going to be really difficult to actually compare these guys, as they are both enormous pieces, but you can definitely see that the new Studio Series version towers over the old Supreme class. Now, one thing which is worth mentioning is that I do in fact actually have the DNA design upgrade kit actually implemented onto this guy, so in a way it's a slightly unfair comparison, as it isn't just a direct Hasbro against Hasbro. This guy does have the upgrade kit going on, but but you can see in regards to detail, I won't take anything away from the Studio Series version. I think it looks excellent, especially where that new Devastator face is concerned, but just in regards to the actual shape, I think that the Hasbro Supreme Class version captured it so much better with this more circular, cylindrical design. It definitely appeared a lot larger in the movie when in comparison to what we actually got here with this figure, and in terms of proportions, I do find in some regards that the Studio Series version is a little lanky and a little slim, especially where this torso region is concerned. I think the shoulders too are not as thick and bulky as they appeared in the movie. So once again, they both have pros and cons. Of course, this guy was formed out of 8 individual Constructicons, all of which were released individually. They all had their own robot modes, vehicle modes, and then combined forms, whereas the Supreme Class version was merely just a one-time release, one-time box set. Only was formed, I believe, out of 6 Constructicons, and they only transformed from vehicle mode into combined mode. So it really just depends on what you are really looking for the display. For those of you who are perhaps younger collectors and still want a Devastator in the collection, I would recommend the Supreme Class figure night and day. I think it's such a fun figure to mess around with. The plastic is super robust. It is a very hefty release. Really can withstand some damage, as it did back in the day when I used to play with it. And the mouth gimmick for me is just awesome. I love that you can in fact actually open it up. The entire mouth essentially transforms in order to vacuum up some Autobots. Such a fantastic piece. And so, some final thoughts. I'm wrapping up this throwback review for Transformers Revenge of the Fallen Supreme Class Devastator. Overall, over a decade on, this figure in my opinion is still awesome. Despite owning the new Studio Series version, this guy still has an incredibly special place in the collection, and even after actually owning the SS version, I still haven't brought myself to pack this guy away in storage, as I just think he's so awesome. Of course, he's not without his faults. Whilst recording this segment, I'm indeed actually holding the switch, just as if you don't, the head will collapse and will in fact make him look as if though he's looking upon the Autobots, and it would have been awesome if we could have had some sort of locking mechanism to actually lock the head into place, as I just think he looks so much cooler like this than actually having the head flat down without it all being expanded. But I think the attention to detail was definitely mediocre. Of course, this was a 2009 figure. I thought the gimmick for the head was by far what sold this for me. The LEDs within the mouth as well as the eyes I thought were awesome. The sound effects too are great. Even after a decade, they've held up impeccably well, still as loud and as crisp as ever. I think the articulation isn't too bad. Of course, you're not going to be able to get him into some super cool poses, but truth be told, you can't really even do that with the Studio Series version. That guy, for the most part, is just a display piece. So the fact that this guy does have some sort of fun gimmick going on for him, in some regards, does make him slightly more enjoyable than that SS version. And despite him being a little smaller than the Studio Series version, he's still an enormous piece. He will definitely tower over pretty much any of the Leader, Voyager, or Deluxes that we've got released in the past decade. So with all that being said, if this is a guy that you don't own in your collection, you're a Michael Bay Revenge of the Fallen movie fan, then I would definitely recommend to add him to the collection, as I still think that he is such an awesome figure. I would love to know down in the comment section below on what you guys thought of both the review as well as this throwback figure itself. As always, please feel free to let me know down in the comment section below what character or figure you would like me to take a look at in the next episode, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.